Welcome to our service of reflection for today, Sunday the 31st of October. Traditionally in the Christian Church, the 31st of October is known as All Hallows Eve, from whence we get the name Halloween. In our country today, the 31st of October means many things to different people. It's a time to honour ancestors and remember loved ones who have died. A time to remember the saints, those who have served faithfully in the name of Jesus. A time when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin. A time to dress up and party, to wear strange clothes and scare ourselves silly with stories. A time to put out pumpkin lanterns, especially in our street where the pumpkin lanterns serve as a notice to children that they can come and find a clue for our street's treasure hunt. A time to mark the changing of the seasons and prepare for the coming of winter. And of course, in the church, we're preparing for Christmas also. So today we mark the passing of summer and welcome the autumn, rejoicing in the light of Christ, who is always with us through the dark nights of winter and the dark nights of our lives. The old Celtic word for today is Samhain, the summer's end, and also it's the Scots Gaelic word for November. And this is traditionally the start of the dark half of the year. At St Matthew's on this last Sunday in October, we remember those who have died in the previous year. Tomorrow is the 1st of November, when we celebrate All Saints' Day. And on Tuesday, the 2nd of November, All Souls, when we hold a service where we name and remember those of our loved ones who have died in the previous year. Our readings today reflect the sadness of loss and the dark times in our lives. And here is a reading from the book of Revelation, followed by a reading from the Gospel of St. John. A reading from the book of Revelation, the new heaven and the new earth. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. And the one who was seated on the throne said, See, I am making all things new. Also he said, Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. Then he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. A reading from the Gospel according to St. John. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upwards and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you would always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and his feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. That reading from Revelation does sometimes pop up at funerals. It reminds us that although we feel great sorrow at the time of a loved one's death, weeping and mourning will pass away to be replaced by a new way of living. And all through this period of sadness, God will be with us to comfort and to sustain. The reading about the death and raising of Lazarus is full of the emotions surrounding death of someone near to us, all the anger and grief and remorse. For the time of around the death of a loved one is very hard. Dealing with the loss and grief of others as well as yourself, and all the official paperwork that has to be done, and the arrangements for funerals, etc., leaves us all tired and emotional, and often in a place that seems very dark. Yet even in the darkest times, there are pinpoints of brightness. Now you may have noticed my little robin friend hopping around in the video there. That robin pops up every time I am pottering around in the garden. It's probably just hoping that I'll turn over something that will reveal a tasty snack for it, but it's a cheerful presence in the autumn garden. There is a belief that a robin is the spirit of a loved one come back to comfort the bereaved, or a sign of new beginnings and new life. I don't know about that, but I do know that the sight of that cheerful little bird singing away with its red feathers and insatiable curiosity does lift up my spirits. And here's the story. After my father died and we came home from the hospital, we began the sad task of telling the news to family and friends. It fell to me to ring my great uncle Reg to let him know of my father's death. Now, great uncle Reg was very deaf and suffering a little with his cognitive abilities. The phone call went something like this. Hello, Uncle Reg. I just want to tell you about Stan. That was my dad. Reg. How is he? Is he home yet? No, Uncle Reg. I'm afraid he died this morning. Reg. What's that? It's getting better? No, Uncle Reg. Died this morning. Reg. Oh, he's not getting better then? No, Uncle Reg, I'm afraid he passed away. And so the call went on. I kept having to say that Dad had died. And each time Reg would say, "What? Speak up. Is he in hospital still then?" Or words to that effect. So the conversation got louder and louder, until I'm sure that the whole road could hear me. After a good long while, Uncle Reg eventually said, "Oh, he's dead, is he? Is he all right then?" At that point, we gave up and wrote a letter. But the thing is, during that conversation, my mum and sister started smiling and then laughing at what was happening. Even in the midst of huge sadness, the stress was broken just a bit by that small opportunity of laughter. When faced with bereavement, what gets us through is our faith, coupled with the presence of family and friends. Our faith can and does sustain us in these times of trial, until we too can come into that glorious inheritance that God keeps for us.
God of all time, we say that time is a healer, and yet healing does not happen without our permission. If we come today with bitterness, persuade us with your sweetness. If we come today still with anger, pacify us with your patience. If we come with pain, soothe us with your tenderness. If we come numb with shock, calm us with your hand placed on our shoulders. If we come in despair, give us hope.
During this time of COVID, many of us have lost loved ones, and so many families and friends have not been able to gather together to mourn or to get together at all to remember due to COVID restrictions on numbers attending funerals and not being able to hold a wake afterwards. In St Matthew's today, we will gather to hear the names of those whom we have lost in the past year or so. We come to give thanks for their lives, especially those of our congregation who have died during this time of pandemic, when we have not been able to gather together to give thanks for their lives or mourn as a community together. Later this afternoon, the church will be open to light candles and share in a short time of reflection and prayer. Whilst outside the church, in the garden, there is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to come along and tie a ribbon to a tree in remembrance of someone they've lost during this past year and a half. You can tie a ribbon at any time during today. There's a box of them available, or you can bring your own. And the service and the tying of ribbons is open to everyone, whatever faith or belief you hold. And if you cannot get to St Matthew's today, maybe you can make your own mark of remembrance where you are. After the morning service today, now that we can meet to have coffee once more, we can talk about the memories that we share of those of our congregation now lost to us, how they were part of our lives together, the abilities they brought, their own particular quirks and habits, and for some, how they shaped us or encouraged us or taught us to learn new skills. When we remember our close family members, we think of how they have shaped us through genes and through skills, objects and memories they leave with us. After my mother died, it was left to my sister and I to begin sorting through the remains of our parents' life on earth. And it's a sorted caramel kind of task. There's the richness and warmth and sweetness that comes from shared memories and the unearthing of things that bring back the good times. But if you've done this, you know that the wounds are still raw, so that these things are also like rubbing salt into the sore places. Finding pictures of my dad from World War II and realising that it's my son's face that's looking out from the photo. My sister reminding me that all the females on my mum's side of the family, including ourselves, or we all sort of get up from a chair in exactly the same way. I'm told I have my dad's smile and his laid-back attitude to life. My sister gets my mum's gift of talking for England and a great capacity for cooking. And that skill has come through to both of my children, one of whom has also inherited the talking skill. Our loved ones live on in our hearts and minds and our descendants. I wonder what will be left behind of us when we eventually are gathered into God's house. Let us not forget, though, that today we remember all those we have lost. We're not here just to remember the named, but we also remember all those who are unnamed. Too many to mention in any one day. The homeless man who died in a doorway with no family to mourn. The old lady who passes away in her home and no one notices for days, weeks or months even. The countless street children throughout the world who are removed. The politically embarrassing who are just disappeared. We keep our departed ones in our prayers and our hearts, where their memory lives forever.
God of all life, life here and now, life beyond death, God of many names, reaching out through beliefs and traditions, and sometimes despite these things, God reaching out with a hand to hold and an ear to listen. Let your Spirit move amongst us. Let burdens be lifted. Let hearts be brightened. May your suffering people find peace. And may those who mourn know they are blessed in you. May God bless us and heal us and hold us in love, today and forevermore. Amen.